On the night that was supposed to be about me and my fiancé, my dad hijacked it to propose to his girlfriend, so I let him have his cringe moment, then quietly announced I was pregnant with twins right as the cake came out and stole it back. The room was glowing with soft string lights, and everyone was dressed up for our engagement party. It was supposed to be my night, mine and Evan's. We'd been planning it for months. Every flower, every playlist choice, every detail. And then my dad walked in with his girlfriend, Veronica, wearing matching navy outfits and a grin that told me something was off. The moment I saw him clutching that small velvet box, my stomach dropped. I knew that box. I'd helped him pick out a ring years ago for my mom, before she got sick, before he cheated, before he blew our family apart. Evan squeezed my hand and whispered, "He wouldn't, right?" But he would. My dad's never seen a spotlight he didn't want to stand under. And sure enough, right when the champagne was being poured and everyone quieted down for our toast, he clinked his glass, stood up, and said, "If I could just steal a quick moment." I remember blinking, thinking he was maybe going to congratulate us. But then he dropped to one knee, right there, at my engagement party. People gasped. Some clapped. I just stood there frozen, glass halfway to my lips. Veronica covered her mouth in fake surprise like she hadn't known. My dad's voice cracked as he gave this long, emotional speech about finding love again, about second chances, about his happiness. Every word burned through me. It was like watching someone hijack your wedding vows mid-sentence. Evan muttered, "You've got to be kidding me." My mom's side of the family, the few who still talked to him, just stared at the floor. My aunt mouthed, "I'm sorry." And when he finally said, "Veronica, will you marry me?" everyone clapped, because what else do you do when someone proposes? You clap, even if it's in the middle of someone else's event. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just smiled, raised my glass, and said, "Congrats, Dad." But inside, something in me hardened. I'd spent years forgiving him for walking out, for choosing Veronica over my dying mom, for pretending everything was fine. And here he was, stealing my moment again. So I decided to let him have it. Let him bask in his tacky, tone-deaf little proposal. Because I knew something he didn't. Something no one there did, not even Evan, not yet. So when the cake came out, this gorgeous, three-tier lemon raspberry masterpiece with Evan and Lily forever in gold icing, I lifted my glass again. The photographer was snapping pictures of my dad and Veronica, her hand up showing off her ring. I waited for the clinking to die down. Then I said, calm as ever, "Since tonight seems full of surprises, I've got one too." Every head turned. My dad froze mid-laugh. I took Evan's hand, smiled, and said, "We're having twins." The room erupted. Gasps, screams, applause. People swarmed us. Evan's face went from confused to utterly speechless to glowing with joy. My dad's grin vanished. Veronica looked like she'd bitten into a lemon. And I just stood there, letting the noise wash over me, letting the room tilt back to where it was supposed to be, about us. I didn't plan to steal his thunder. But in that moment, it felt like karma handed me the mic. Still, I didn't realize then that my little announcement would set off something way bigger. Something that would turn the next few months into a mess of lies, guilt, and revenge I never saw coming. Because my dad, he doesn't lose gracefully. To really understand why that night meant so much, and why what came after hit so hard, you need to know what my dad's like. He used to be my hero. He was funny, charming, the life of every party. When I was little, he'd sneak me ice cream after bedtime, make up silly songs about my freckles, and promise me that real men never break their word. I believed him. Then my mom got sick, breast cancer. She fought for 2 years. During that time, he worked late a lot. It wasn't until I was 16 that I figured out what those late nights really were: dinners with Veronica, his coworker. Mom died still wearing her wedding ring. I remember standing by her hospital bed, her hand cold in mine, and Dad wasn't even there. He was stuck in traffic. Later, I found out he'd been out with Veronica again. I didn't talk to him for almost 3 years after that, moved out as soon as I graduated. He'd call sometimes, leave guilt-trippy voicemails. "You only get one father, Lil." I'd delete them all. Then, 2 years ago, Evan came into my life. He was quiet where my dad was loud, steady where my dad was impulsive. When Evan proposed, I felt like I was finally closing the door on everything ugly from before. My dad tried to reconnect right around then. Maybe he sensed it. He wanted to start fresh. Against my better judgment, I let him back in. He cried when I told him about the engagement, said he wanted to help plan the party. He even offered to cover the catering bill, which I stupidly thought was a kind gesture. Now I realize it was just him buying his way into the center of it. I should have known he'd pull something. Veronica had been pushing this whole blended family narrative for months. She'd post pictures of the two of them at brunch, captions like, "Love always finds its way back." It made me sick. The night of the party, I saw it in their eyes. They were waiting for a moment. And I guess when you're as self-absorbed as my dad, someone else's happiness just looks like an empty stage. Evan told me later he almost stopped the proposal, but he saw the look on my face and decided not to. "You had that calm before the storm look," he said. He was right. I wasn't about to cause a scene, not yet. When I announced the pregnancy, I didn't think of it as revenge. Not then. It was more like reclaiming something. My night, my family's future. But that one moment of taking control, that spark of satisfaction, it must have lit something in my dad. Because a week later, he started calling again. Texting, asking about doctor appointments, acting all fatherly like he had some right to be part of this new chapter. At first, I ignored him. Then things started to get weird. Little things at first. A mix-up with the event photographer, where my dad ended up with all our engagement photos. A rumor that I'd stolen his big moment. Then, a month later, Veronica sent me a text that made my stomach drop. It said, "If you really want to play games, we can too. You don't know half of what he's capable of." And she was right. Because the next time I saw my dad, he didn't just want to talk, he wanted something from me. Something I could never have imagined he'd ask. He showed up at our apartment one Sunday morning, uninvited. I heard the knock and thought it was our neighbor, but when I opened the door, there he was holding coffee, smiling like nothing had ever happened. "Morning, kiddo," he said, brushing past me like he still lived there. Evan froze on the couch. We hadn't seen him since the party. "I figured I'd bring some lattes for the parents-to-be," Dad said, placing them on the table like he owned the place. I didn't say anything for a minute. Just watched him make himself comfortable. He looked around, nodded approvingly, and said, "You've done well for yourself, proud of you." I wanted to believe it was genuine. I really did. But then his tone shifted, casual, like he was testing the water. "So I've been thinking," he said, sitting down. "You know, the engagement party got everyone talking. A lot of people said we should maybe do something joint for the weddings, a double celebration." I blinked. "What?" He smiled wider. "You know, since Veronica and I haven't set a date yet, we could save money, make it special, family coming together. Symbolic, right?" Evan actually laughed out loud. "You're not serious." But my dad was. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "It'd be perfect, Lily. One big event. You and I both getting our fresh starts. And I mean, we could split the costs. Fair's fair." I could feel my pulse in my ears. "You want me to share my wedding day with you and the woman who helped destroy our family?" His jaw tightened. "That's an unfair word, destroy. Your mother and I—" "Don't," I snapped. "Don't rewrite history. You cheated on her while she was dying." The silence that followed felt thick, almost physical. Then, in that infuriating calm tone he always used when he was cornered, he said, "You've really got to let that go, kiddo. Anger eats you alive." Evan stood up. "You need to leave." Dad didn't move. He just looked at me, that smug little smirk creeping back. "You'll think about it," he said. "Because whether you like it or not, family is family." He left soon after, but that conversation replayed in my head all night. The next week, Veronica started posting things on Facebook, wedding inspiration, double ceremonies, polls asking who wore it better with my engagement photos beside pictures of her in white dresses. It got worse. My dad called my aunt, my cousins, even my mom's old friends, telling them about this beautiful shared wedding idea. He made it sound like I had suggested it. People started texting me congratulations on the joint event. I was humiliated. Evan wanted to go confront him, but I told him no. I said I'd handle it myself. Then the medical bills started. Not ours, his. Somehow, he'd used my name as a reference for a loan he took out to pay for Veronica's cosmetic surgery. The bank called me about it. That's when I realized this wasn't just about stealing a spotlight anymore. He was using me, manipulating everything he could to make himself look like the devoted father and me the ungrateful daughter. I tried to stay calm, but then something strange happened. I started receiving anonymous letters. Typed, "No return address." Each one had a line or two that only my dad could have known, personal things from my childhood. The last one said, "You owe him more than you think." That's when I decided, if he wanted to play games, I'd play too. But I'd make sure mine ended with him wishing he'd never tried. A few days after that last letter, I decided to confront him. Not at his house. I didn't trust myself to be alone with him, but at a small diner halfway between our places. I told Evan to stay home. I needed to do this on my own. He walked in 20 minutes late, wearing sunglasses indoors like he was some kind of celebrity. "Kiddo," he said, sliding into the booth, "you look tired. Pregnancy will do that." I didn't even bother with small talk. "Why are you doing this?" He raised an eyebrow. "Doing what?" "The fake loan, the Facebook crap, the letters." His smirk faltered for half a second, enough to tell me I was right. He leaned back. "You're imagining things again, Lily. You always overreact." "Cut the gaslighting," I said, my voice shaking. "I know it's you." That's when he smiled again, that same cold, confident smile I used to mistake for charm. "You think you can embarrass me like that and just walk away? You humiliated me in front of everyone I know. You made me look like a fool." I blinked. "By announcing I was pregnant." He leaned forward, voice low. "You planned it. Don't act innocent. You stole my moment on purpose. You wanted everyone to pity me, the dad who can't even propose without his daughter stealing the show." I felt my stomach twist. He really believed that. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. "You think those twins are your perfect little redemption story, huh? You might want to make sure Evan's actually their father before you brag about them." I stared at him, speechless. "What the hell are you talking about?" He chuckled. "Ask your fiancé about the night of the rehearsal dinner. Ask him why he didn't answer your calls that night. Maybe you'll get some answers." My throat went dry. "You're lying," he shrugged. "Maybe. Maybe not, but if I were you, I'd do a paternity test, just to be sure." I sat there, shaking. He tossed a few bills on the table, stood up and said, "Oh, and about the joint wedding idea, Veronica and I are moving forward with it. We've already booked the venue." He left before I could say another word. I sat in that diner long after he was gone, staring at the empty booth across from me, trying to breathe. When I finally got home, Evan was waiting. He looked anxious. I asked, "Where were you the night of the rehearsal dinner?" He froze. Just like that, a tiny pause that told me my dad wasn't bluffing. He rubbed the back of his neck. "It's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is," I said. He sighed. "Veronica called me that night. She said your dad was drunk and needed a ride home. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to make things worse." "Why didn't you answer my calls?" He hesitated. "My phone died." I stared at him. "Did you go inside?" "Yes," he admitted quietly. "For 5 minutes, I swear." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But all I could see was my dad's smirk. His smug, satisfied smirk when he told me to get a paternity test. That night, I cried harder than I had since my mom died. Not because I believed Evan cheated, but because my dad had managed to poison the one good thing I had left. And as I sat there on the bathroom floor, one hand over my stomach, I made myself a promise. If my dad wanted war, I'd give it to him. For 2 days, I barely slept. I kept replaying my dad's words. "You might want to make sure Evan's actually their father." It wasn't even about believing him anymore. It was about control. He'd done it again, crawled into my head, twisted everything good into something ugly. Evan begged me to trust him. He swore nothing happened. I wanted to believe him. But the seed was planted, and my dad knew it. That was his real weapon, doubt. So I decided to stop reacting and start planning. Step 1, information. If my dad wanted to play mind games, I'd give him facts he couldn't twist. I scheduled a prenatal paternity test. Evan didn't even flinch when I asked. "Whatever it takes to end this," he said. That made me cry a little. Step 2, exposure. I started digging. My dad's new business, the one he bragged about at the party, was some kind of consulting firm that helped other people file insurance claims. It didn't take long to figure out what it really was: a front for falsified paperwork and fake referrals. He was making money off insurance fraud. I knew he was crooked, but this was next level. Step 3, connection. I called my mom's old friend Denise, who still worked at the same insurance company where my dad used to have contacts. I told her everything: the fake loan, the manipulation, the threats. Denise didn't even sound surprised. "He's been circling trouble for years," she said. "If you have proof, the state will eat him alive." That became my focus proof. I dug through emails, found texts from him asking for my SSN for paperwork, copies of bank messages about the loan he'd linked to my name. Every piece of it painted a picture of someone who thought he was untouchable. Meanwhile, I played dumb. I texted him, thanked him for the coffee visit, acted like we were patching things up. He loved it. He started oversharing, bragging about big deals and investors. I kept every message. Evan, for his part, stayed quiet but supportive. When the test results came back, confirming 100% that he was the father, I felt something in me harden into steel. The twins weren't just my family. They were my line in the sand. That night I told Evan everything, the fraud, the plan, the timing. I want to destroy him, I said, not just embarrass him. I want him exposed for what he really is. He looked at me for a long time, then said, "Then let's make it poetic." So we waited. We let him dig his own hole. He invited us to a family dinner to celebrate his engagement. I said yes, all smiles, knowing it was my stage now. My plan was simple. Record the dinner, get him bragging about the insurance scam on camera, and then hand everything to Denise the next day. But what I didn't know, what no amount of planning could have prepared me for, was that someone else was already pulling strings behind the scenes. And they were about to flip my entire plan inside out. The family dinner was at this overpriced Italian place downtown, white tablecloths, fake candlelight, the kind of place my dad loved because it made him feel important. He and Veronica were already seated when we arrived. She was wearing a white cocktail dress again. I think she thought it was cute, how she kept mirroring bridal looks. He stood up, hugged me like we were close, and said loud enough for nearby tables to hear, "There's my beautiful daughter, the one who finally forgave her old man." Evan's hand tightened around mine under the table. I smiled through my teeth. Dinner started off normal enough, wine, small talk, my dad pretending he cared about the twins. Then he launched into stories about his business success, talking about clients, payouts, helping families rebuild after loss. I was secretly recording on my phone, the mic tucked under my napkin. I thought everything was going perfectly until Veronica excused herself to the bathroom. She left her purse behind, and I noticed it buzzing. Once, twice, 3 times. The screen lit up just enough for me to see the name, Evan. My stomach went cold. I looked at him. He looked at the table. I mouthed, "What the hell?" He whispered, "I'll explain later." But I didn't wait. When Veronica came back, I said, calm and sweet, "Hey, Veronica, your phone's been blowing up. Looks like Evan's trying to reach you." Her face turned white. My dad looked between us, confused. "What's going on?" he demanded. Evan started to speak, but I beat him to it. "Yeah, I'd love to know too," Veronica stammered. It's not what it looks like." Then my dad snapped. "What isn't what it looks like?" The whole table froze. Evan looked like he was about to pass out. Veronica tried to grab her purse, but I snatched it first. I opened the screen, dozens of missed calls, texts, all from Evan. Some from that night he was supposedly giving my dad a ride home. The most recent one read, "We need to talk before she finds out." Everything went still. Evan whispered, "Lily, please." My dad's face turned red. "You've got to be kidding me. You too," Veronica cried. "It wasn't like that." But he was already shouting, slamming his hand on the table so hard the wine spilled. "You slept with my daughter's fiancé?" Everyone in the restaurant turned to stare. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Evan said, "It happened once. Before we were even official, I swear I didn't hear the rest." My ears were ringing. I stood up, grabbed my bag, and walked out before I completely fell apart. Outside, I threw up in the alley behind the restaurant. Everything hit me at once. My dad's manipulations, Veronica's smugness, Evan's betrayal. It was all tangled together, one endless cycle of people using each other. But when I calmed down enough to breathe, I realized something. My dad hadn't known about Evan and Veronica, not until that moment. He thought I had humiliated him. But now he was the one being humiliated in public in front of witnesses. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel powerless. I felt dangerous. Because I still had the recording of him bragging about his insurance fraud sitting safely on my phone. And I still had one more card left to play, one that would make sure his downfall was complete. It took me 3 nights of replaying that dinner recording, the one where he got sloppy and started bragging, before I heard the part that made my stomach drop in a way nothing else ever had. I wasn't even expecting it. I was supposed to be looking for names, dates, proof of fraud. What I found was worse. Motive. The cold, meticulous reason he'd done all of this. I was sitting on the floor of our tiny Chicago apartment, knees hugged to my chest, the phone on speaker between us. Evan had gone to get coffee, said he needed air. I hit play and let my dad's voice roll out into the quiet. At first it was the same smug, performative pride, money, clients, how he'd fixed people's claims. Then his voice changed. He was talking to Veronica, lower, almost tender. "You know why I did it, right?" he said. "It's not about her. Never was. It's about being seen." Veronica laughed, soft. "But stealing her night. That's cruel." He didn't flinch. "Cruel gets you attention. Sympathy gets you the world. People love the guy who can get back up. They donate, they forgive, they sign checks. Lily's triumph, it made everyone look at her like a saint. I can't have that. I need them looking at me." I felt my hands go numb. He went on, speaking like a man outlining a business plan, not a person confessing to a child. "When your mother was sick, people felt sorry for me. Then she died and they felt worse for me. But then Lily left, and they started putting her on a pedestal. Weddings, babies, the kind of social capital I can't buy back with charm. So I make a scene, I get the spotlight. I'm the wounded dad again. I get calls, little donations, favors. Veronica and I make a life out of the leftovers." There it was, the truth. Not passion, not love, not even cowardice. Calculated market making. He'd turned sympathy into currency. He wasn't an absent father because he'd been weak. He was absent because, in his mind, absence till a dramatic re-entry paid dividends. He'd chosen Veronica not because she was love, but because she was a partner who knew how to stage manage pity. Then he said the line that made the hair on my arms stand up. "And those babies, they're a product. Proof. Grandkids make people forgive everything. They soften them. They'll shorten memories. If Lily's centered on the kids, she'll be easier to direct. Financially, emotionally. She'll be my soft landing if anything goes wrong with the business. If anyone asks uncomfortable questions, I point to the babies and say, 'I'm a grandfather now, I have responsibilities.'" Who would touch a grandfather? Who would mess with a family man? It wasn't just narcissism. It was predatory planning. He'd engineered humiliation to rebrand himself, and then planned to weaponize the very thing I loved, my kids, into a shield for his crimes. He'd already tried to pull me into his financial web with that loan, using my name like a seatbelt he could tighten whenever it suited him. The paternity whisper wasn't a joke. It was a tool. If he could seed doubt, he could destabilize my marriage, make me rely on him more, and make me easier to manipulate. Hearing him say it out loud was like watching a small animal realize the trap's been baited. Slow, cold, and sickening. I pressed stop and laughed, a short, sharp sound that sounded nothing like me. The laughter was half fury, half a horrible, hollow grief. My mother had been dying, and his calculus had been social return on investment. My family had been a spreadsheet. My childhood a series of line items to be optimized for sympathy. That's when the real thing settled in. This wasn't salvageable. There was no apology that would scratch the surface. There was no private conversation that would make this better. He'd chosen a life that made cruelty profitable, and I was either one of his assets or his obstacle. Knowing his reason changed everything. Revenge stopped being about petty humiliation and became about cutting the spider's web at its center, exposing how he monetized grief and stole identity. If he thought he could trade on grandchildren and pity to bury his crimes, I would make sure there were no safe places left for him to hide. No mercy, no theater, just the law, cold and precise, and the truth laid out like evidence. Once I knew the truth, everything clicked into focus. My dad's entire life was a performance, tragedy as branding, pity as profit. I wasn't dealing with a broken man. I was dealing with a salesman who used guilt as a product. And I was done being part of his inventory, so I stopped reacting emotionally. I got methodical, quiet. I gathered everything. The recording, the text messages about fake loans, screenshots of his posts bragging about helping families, even the business paperwork he'd accidentally emailed me months before. I built a timeline, a digital file with color-coded tabs. Then I called Denise. I told her I was ready. She helped me file a report, not anonymously, but officially with my name attached. She connected me with a state investigator who handled insurance fraud. I told him everything, even the personal parts that made me sick to say out loud. He listened without judgment. When I handed him the recording, he said quietly, "This is going to burn him to the ground." It did. A month later, my dad was indicted on multiple counts of fraud and identity misuse. They traced thousands of dollars of falsified claims back to his consulting firm. The investigators said my documentation made the case airtight. He was arrested in front of his office, Veronica crying, reporters filming. The same spotlight he'd always chased now burned him alive. I didn't go to the hearing. I watched it on the local news, one hand on my stomach. The fallout was brutal. His friends disappeared. Veronica tried to claim she knew nothing, but text records proved she'd helped falsify paperwork. She got probation. He got time. 6 years, maybe more if the federal charges stuck. The night the verdict came in, Evan and I sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket. We didn't talk for a long time. Then he said, "You could have just walked away." I nodded. I could have, but walking away only works if the fire stops spreading. He would have come back, he always does. He looked down at my belly. "He can't hurt you now." And for the first time in my life, I believed that. A few weeks later, I got a letter from him, handwritten messy. He said I'd ruined his life, that I'd betrayed family loyalty. He still didn't get it. I didn't respond. I just folded it neatly, tucked it into a box labeled evidence of closure, and put it in the closet. The twins came early, 2 girls, healthy and loud. When the nurse handed them to me, I whispered, "No one will ever own your story but you." I named them Grace and Nora. A year later, we had a small ceremony. No big wedding, no spotlight, no grand speeches. Just us, our friends, and 2 tiny girls asleep in white dresses. Someone asked if I wanted to invite my dad. I didn't even hesitate. "No," I said. He already had his show. When the cake came out, simple vanilla, no gold lettering, no drama, Evan laughed and asked, "You want to make another announcement this time?" I smiled. "No. I think I'll let the quiet be the surprise." Because that's what real revenge feels like, peace so steady it terrifies the people who tried to break you. And in that silence, I finally took back every stolen moment.